Happy Friday, everybody, especially for Drey Jameson, who had an amazing debut. We'll get to him in just a bit. But before we do, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Kokomo Friday is up next.
Alcantara, Soroka, you look so good in polka. Peralta, Manoa, bounce back for Aaronola. Giolito, Castillo, Yoshida, Wilson, Staccato, and Fado. Value so high, but ADP so low. Frank Clubs, hit some kind of Joe. Now let's get on with the show.
Happy Kokomo Friday and welcome in to Fantasy Baseball today on September 16th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White. Today on the show, Drey Jameson looked pretty good in his debut. Shane O'Mac is back. Week 25 sleepers, 2-star pitchers, and much more. Before we get into it, Scotty, listening to the Kokomo Friday theme song, which obviously we love, we're jamming out. I wonder how many years we'll have to go in the future before we think, who the heck was Connor Joe?
That is the downside. Yes. You make it too topical, then it's going to sound dated very soon. Even though it's fun and it's wonderful in the moment. Oh, look at this. Like, it's just so well suited for our show. But yeah, already it's like Connor Joe will never be a fantasy entity again. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. He couldn't get it done in Colorado. That's it.
Hey, I actually sent out a few trade offers in the Scott White Dynasty League earlier in the season, and thankfully they were turned down because, frankly, I do agree with you. I don't have much faith in our boy Connor Joe. But for the real OGs out there, a couple of years from now, we'll be looking back and you'll remember, hopefully, who Connor Joe is. Let's get into it.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Oh my goodness gracious, Scotty, you are up.
All right, I will take the low-hanging fruit, the Olive Garden breadstick. I will take Drey Jameson, who, yes, much like his fellow rookie teammate, Ryan Nelson, Drey Jameson had a brilliant 7-inning debut against the Padres. 2 hits allowed, no runs, struck out 5. 8 swinging strikes on 90 pitches. I mean, that's not an impressive number, and 5 strikeouts in 7 innings, I guess, is not particularly impressive either. But 2 hitting a team over 7 innings, a playoff-bound team over 7 innings in your major league debut obviously is. And you can find some highlights, Drey Jameson. He looks pretty impressive in the highlights. I will say that. And he's a guy with some prospect standing, so from that perspective, it's not surprising, but from the perspective of him having a 6.31 ERA in the minors this year, it very much is. 6.31 ERA, 1.49 WHIP, right at a strikeout per inning. But remember, that was also the issue for Ryan Nelson, who then went out and dominated the Dodgers in his second start of the year. So I'm kind of getting the impression, and I mentioned this last time, Alec Thomas, he put up good power numbers in the Diamondbacks minor league system. I'm kind of getting the impression that it's going to be hard to evaluate Diamondbacks prospects based on minor league numbers, just because both AA and AAA in their system, very hitter friendly. Of course, AAA Reno is in a league that's hitter friendly as a whole. And so I was trying to find park factor numbers for Reno itself. And all I could find on Baseball America was in relation to other venues in that same league, and it didn't really stand out as especially hitter friendly. And I was looking at last year's data anyway, so I don't know. When you're trying to find obscure stats like minor league park factors, part of the challenge is just knowing where to find it. And if anyone knows of a better source than this article Baseball America publishes once a year, then feel free to point it out to me. I always Chris is great at finding stuff like that. Just places to find obscure pieces of data like that. But what I'm trying to say is Reno doesn't, by what I can look up, Reno doesn't stand out in that way, and yet we're seeing this happen, twice in a row now. Pitchers who weren't supposed to struggle in the Diamondback system, who very much did, and then come to the majors and look great. Now, having said all that, Drey Jameson's next start is against the Dodgers. Is Lightning going to strike twice like it did for Ryan Nelson dominating the Padres, and then the Dodgers? Can Drey Jameson perform the same feat? With everything on the line, I'm going to bet against it. So I'm not sure there's much practical application for him at this point in the season. But, just from the perspective of scouting for next year, Drey Jameson could put himself in a position to be somebody we think about taking late in drafts.
So, Scotty, I found an article here from milb.com. That's MILB.com, where you can find all your minor league stats and lots of fun things for prospects. And according to this article, they have a chart with park factors. This is based on last year. So 2021 in the
last
PCL.
Year, exactly. Which could be, could be different this year.
Yeah, it could be. Definitely could be. But according to them, Reno ranked second in terms of park factors in the PCL. And that is out of, looks like 18 different ballparks. So, I mean, that's pretty significant. And they're fourth in home run park factors. So, again, we would have to find that data for 2022, but at least based on last year, Reno was a pretty hitter-friendly environment. So I don't know how much stock we can put into the numbers for specifically the pitchers when we're evaluating them. Like if there's inflated ERAs and whips for guys like Drey Jameson and Ryan Nelson, I just don't know how much stock we can put into that. And I guess the other side, which you also mentioned, power numbers for guys like Alec Thomas and Corbin Carroll. So I don't want to completely just dismiss it and sweep it under the rug and say, oh, these guys are going to be great now. But, I think you kind of just take it with a bit of a grain of salt. It's small sample size so far, but through 3 starts combined for Drey Jameson and Ryan Nelson, they look pretty good. So especially if you have either of these guys in dynasty leagues that, obviously you're excited at what you've seen through the very small sample size, 3 starts.
What was that first park factor number you gave for Reno? Because you said the second one was home runs. They're fourth.
So
that's what I have too.
It's just in terms of runs, they're second among the PCL ballparks.
Okay. That's interesting. So Baseball America has different stats for last year because they have them fourth in runs in the PCL as well.
Either, I guess, fourth out of 18 ballparks. That would still rank pretty highly. But yeah, what I'm looking at is second. So anyway, the point is that maybe these guys are actually pretty good. Ryan Nelson and Drey Jameson rather. I agree. I don't think you're picking up either one, but let's see how they finish out the season. Drey Jameson 3% rostered. Just in terms of the pitch mix here, he threw his fastball 44%, 4-seam fastball 44%. His sinker was 28%. So really kind of just leaning on those 2 fastballs so far. 17% slider, 10% changeup, and he did average 96 miles per hour on his fastball. But he did look very good. So shout out to Drey Jameson in his debut. Oh my goodness gracious, for me, Scotty, is Lance McCullers, who we have not really talked about much since returning from the IL. He put up a season-high 11 strikeouts against the Oakland A's. He went 6 innings, 2 runs, those 11 strikeouts to 4 walks. He had 16 swinging strikes on 99 pitches. His 11 strikeouts are his most in a start since July 29th of 2018. So really great one here for McCullers. And through 6 starts, he's got a 2.34 ERA, over a strikeout per inning. The walks are just a huge issue, Scott. 4.9 walks per 9 for McCullers so far. Do you feel comfortable starting him at Tampa Bay next week? They are 21st in WOBA against right-handed pitching.
I wouldn't say it's a high priority. Yeah, the walks do concern me. And I mean, this was clearly the best McCullers has looked so far, which is nice to see. But a 1-start week, a pretty good matchup there against the Rays. But still, I think most highly competitive teams at this stage of the season are probably going to be able to do better than McCullers. If I could get him on my sleeper pitchers week If I could get him on my pitcher, gosh, I can't talk today. If I could get him on my sleeper pitchers list for this week, he would probably rank 5th at best. So I wouldn't say it's you can do it, but I wouldn't say it's the highest priority to start McCullers.
And he is not on your sleeper pitchers list because I assume, is 2 rostered at this point.
2 rostered.
He's 89% rostered. He's 66% started, which, kind of makes sense. There's probably some shallower formats, some 10-team leagues in there, 12-team points leagues where you only start 5 pitchers, where Lance McCullers, again, might not be a priority for you, but this was a great start for him. And, if he can finish out the season strong and maybe show us something in the postseason, maybe we're excited about drafting Lance McCullers once again in 2023. We mentioned Drey Jameson earlier. Let's talk about another prospect, a hitter, Jordan Groshans. He followed up his 3-for-3 outing on Wednesday with his first career homer on Thursday. And it wasn't like a moonshot or anything like that. No kind of crazy EV. But I thought it was pretty impressive. I watched this home run. It was an inside pitch. It was really in there. And he pulled his hands in. I was really impressed. And, he was able to pull it down the line. So just kind of impressed by his hitting mechanics, his hitting skill to get that one out. He's only 7% rostered. I don't think he's a high priority either, Scott, but
No.
Jordan Groshans, 6 games next week, does have Cubs and Nationals pitching. So maybe if you're playing a deeper league and you're really desperate for a middle infielder, maybe. I don't know. Yeah,
the Marlins matchups are pretty good, but this was the 4th home run Groshans has hit all year, and it's not like it was a strong demonstration of power, as you pointed out. He just kind of hit it in the right spot. So I can't imagine any league where I'd be looking to use him right now.
Oh, right. Oh, my goodness gracious. Offense from Thursday. The White Sox, they hit 5 home runs up against the Cleveland Guardians. I believe they were facing a pitcher in his major league debut. Poor guy. I'm sorry. But the point here is that they hit 5 home runs. Andrew Vaughn hit his 16th. Gavin Sheets hit his 13th. Yasmani Grandal hit his 9th. Yoan Moncada hit his 10th home run. And in 8 games since returning, he's batting .389 with 3 homers, 91 mile per hour average exit velocity, and a 52% fly ball rate. So really small sample, but Moncada is kind of doing some things right now. And then Elvis Andrus, who hit his 14th home run. That is now the 2nd most in his career. I don't know what's going on. Turning back the clocks. If you lost any kind of middle infielder to injury and you just kind of scooped up Elvis Andrus, he has been amazing. 25 games with the White Sox, .308 batting average, 6 homers, 3 steals. We'll get to him a little bit later on with the sleeper hitters. Scott, I want to ask you about Moncada. I read off the numbers. He's hitting the ball hard. He's putting it in the air. 54% rostered. He's got 6 games next week. Any love for Yoan Moncada next week?
The matchups are decent. He's got a 3-game series against the Tigers. It's basically been 2 games. He had that 5-hit game in Oakland, the launching pad, and then he had this 4-hit game on Thursday. In between, he went 2 for 17. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this home run he hit on Thursday was a 420-foot home run. He hit it 104 miles per hour. Now, 104 miles per hour is, it's hard contact. Is it 420-foot contact? I mean, I'm sure somebody could tell me, somebody who's a little more statistically minded could tell me if that's normal. But that seems like I don't feel like most 420. I feel like most 420-foot home runs are hit harder than that, right? Like something going on.
So what do you
We talked about the home run to fly ball rate was higher in September, the highest it's been all year. I mean, it could just be environmental conditions. The ball's stored in the humidor this year. It's just this is the most optimal environment for those right now. But I don't know. It just makes me wonder. That's all. And about Moncada specifically, I just feel like it's a lot, but I still feel like it's too little too late.
So I was watching the Diamondbacks game later on, and to see Drey Jameson, I wanted to see what he was doing. Emmanuel Rivera hit a home run. It was 98 miles per hour off the bat. And they showed the StatCast data for it. and the league average on home runs this season is 104 miles per hour, according to the graphic that they showed. So Moncada hitting this home run 104 off the bat. I'm sure average home run distance is not 420. Obviously, not every home run is created equal. I understand that, but
Yeah, it's not purely a measure of exit velocity, how far the home run goes. Of course, you have trajectory and all of that, but I don't know. I only bothered to look into it because with Moncada's performance at Oakland, it seemed like it was definitely inflated by the environment there. And did he hit 2 home runs that day? Let me see if I can look at it.
that sounds
I
right.
have my podcast notes. Like I've just been working off the same document all year. So I have all my podcast notes going back to the start of April. Yeah. So
How do you manage that?
I don't know. I'm interested in seeing how many characters it ends up being at the end of the year.
Oh my gosh.
So Moncada, this was on September 8th. Moncada went 5 for 5, 2 home runs in Oakland. Both hit 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just saying, like he may be excelling partly because this is the most favorable the hitting environment has been all season. And that could change very quickly because we're days away from the fall. Not that climate responds to the calendar exactly, but it could change very suddenly.
Scott, do you have a hat available? Like near you at all? Just a hat, a cap or anything?
Actually, I do.
All right, let's put that hat on. Let's get that on you.
It's gonna mess up my hair though.
This is your hair will look fine, Scott. Scott is now wearing his conspiracy theory hat. We're gonna take a little trip down conspiracy theory lane because I saw someone chirping about this on Twitter. I forgot who it was, so I apologize. Aaron Judge obviously is chasing a home run record. It's not the home run record. Some people consider it to be the home run record. I don't myself. It is the American League home run record for what it's worth. Obviously, he's chasing Roger Maris, 61 home runs. Would it really surprise anybody if MLB was like, hey, let's mix in some of those juice balls and hopefully Aaron Judge can break this record and we can make a big deal about it and get some eyes on baseball? Would not surprise me one bit, Scott.
Hey, like I was saying the other day, people lose faith in institutions. The conspiracy theories run rampant. So I think we're at that point with the institution of MLB. Now, I don't know that I subscribe to that myself. I don't. I think that requires a level of intention that they generally don't demonstrate and foresight that they don't generally demonstrate. And so I don't know that that's it. But I have thought this, and I was tweeting about the other day, and it was, it seemed like kind of a novel thought. We've learned in the past 5 years or so just how much of a difference very small deviations in the ball, the way the ball is manufactured, can make. Like how tightly it's wound, the firmness of the core, etc. Just very small, imperceptible differences can make a huge difference in how how home runs are hit, how frequently they're hit. So, you look back at 1961, you got Roger Maris hitting 61, you got Mickey Mantle hitting 60, and like home runs were basically up across the league. So I'm just saying, like, for most of the history, the manufacturing of the balls has been done by hand. There had to be a ton of variability in how they were put together. Like, it just makes me question how legitimate any home run record is, because like so much just depends on the equipment.
And I haven't done enough research into the history of baseball to know if there would have been any motives to, I don't know, have a bouncier ball back then. But obviously,
no, I don't think anybody knew. Like, this seems like a recent. I don't even know that they had the equipment to test that.
Right. Yeah, but it would not surprise me if they do it now because we've seen them kind of change the ball around in different seasons and different months within season. So I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me. Do I personally believe that? Probably not. And I don't want to discount what Judge is doing because obviously he's been awesome, but it just would not surprise me one bit. Anyway, let's get back to actual baseball. Shane O'Mac is back.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Oh, Scott, I've been waiting to hear that song once again. And he looked pretty good. 5 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts against the Blue Jays, 14 swinging strikes on 69 pitches. That is a 20% swinging strike rate in this one. Velocity was up, seemed to be healthy, amped up in this one. Slider was up 2.4 miles per hour. The fastball was up 1 mile per hour. And obviously, I'm not going to read out his season-long numbers because he's been awesome regardless. I think he's in line for 2 starts next week, Scott. So I assume it's all systems go with Shane McClanahan.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is pretty impressive. I mean, we knew he wasn't going to go throw 90 pitches, first start back, no rehab assignment, but he got through 69. And as you point out, the velocity was up on everything. So he looked great. And 2 starts next week. Let's see what those matchups are. Not that it really matters.
It might. The Astros and Blue Jays. It's
No.
not great. Look, you're starting.
Yeah, I mean, the matchups aren't great, but it's Shane McClanahan with 2 starts after after looking perfectly fine in his return. So, yeah, they don't matter.
How about this? Oh, I hope it lines up this way. It probably won't, but Verlander pitches Friday. Can we get Shane O'Mac versus Verlander next week? I don't think it's going to be enough time in between, but man, that would be fun. Whoever wins gets the Cy Young. Let's just kind of put it on the table there. Shane O'Mac versus Justin Verlander. Dylan Cease has something to say about that as well. But anyway, Shane O'Mac looked great. Get him back in your lineups if he isn't already. Some players that are scuffling to the finish line, Scott. I've got two hitters and 2 pitchers here. We'll start off with MJ Melendez, who, man, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts here on Thursday. Over his last 30 games, he is hitting 158 with 1 homer, a 504 OPS. And, we've been getting questions about, can I drop this star player? Can I drop this star player? MJ Melendez is not a star, but he is a starting worthy catcher just because the position is quite bad. But at this point, I think you could probably drop someone like this. The question is, who would you add? So would you be willing to drop Melendez for someone like Cal Raleigh or Danny Jansen or Eric Haas? Those are really the only catchers that are popping off right now.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you don't have to go far down at the catcher position to get to a really desperate place. Cal Raleigh, I guess, is the most interesting of them. He doesn't have great matchups next week. In fact, no, actually he does. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong team. No, the Mariners do have the second best matchups next week. So I could see that, I guess, especially if you're talking about a categories league. In a points league, I think Raleigh strikes out so much that I wouldn't bother. But in a categories league, I could see starting him over Melendez, given how late we are in the season. So, you don't have to worry about, I'm never going to get Melendez back when he turns things around. And it's obviously not a concern right now. So I can see doing that, sure.
Would you do it for Yasmani Grandal, who I think he returned in, was it late August? I looked up his numbers. They weren't good. I think this was like his second home run since returning.
Right.
Yeah. He's just not doing much either.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to switch from Melendez to him.
Right. All right. So if you do want to go with a streamer, Cal Raleigh, potentially someone for next week, Josh Bell has been quite bad with the San Diego Padres. In 38 games, he is batting .204 with 3 home runs, and the ground balls are way up once again, 55% since joining the Padres. Strikeout rate is also up compared to where it was earlier in the season. Would you drop Josh Bell in shallower leagues, Scott, just for the final couple of weeks? Yandy Diaz is someone who popped out for me, who hit his 9th home run on Thursday. Obviously, like, not a lot of power or anything, but if you play in a points league, Yandy Diaz, his last 30 games, hitting .365, 3 homers, 11 doubles, just crushing the ball. And he's 77% rostered. Would you make that swap, Josh Bell for Yandy Diaz?
77%, and I presume that includes most of the points leagues because that is his better format. When I make that swap, well, Well, I mean, the Padres do have the better matchups between the two teams next week. I mean, I could go either way with that. I've just continued to start Bell. I have him in a couple points leagues, and I've just kind of kept running him out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have alternatives as good as Yandy Diaz, I would say. So you could do it, or you could not do it. You want me to give you a definitive answer, I'm sure.
I would
sure. Bench Bell for Diaz in a points league.
I would do it. Would you do it for Joey Meneses?
Nah. Nationals have really tough matchups next week.
All right. A couple of pitchers who are scuffling recently. Kevin Gausman gives up another 5 earned runs over 7 innings pitched against Tampa Bay. This is now his 5th start with 5 or more runs this season. And over his last 7 starts, Gausman has a 5.02 ERA, well over a strikeout per inning, rather. His underlying numbers are still very good during this time, like they have been for most of the season. The only thing that isn't good is his BABIP, which continues to be a massive problem. It's up over 350 during the 7-start stretch. It's 365 on the season, which I'll pull it up. I think that's probably still the league leader among qualified pitchers. It's
100 points higher than last year for him.
It's so weird to figure out. I know he plays in Toronto now, and the artificial turf, maybe when he gives up hard hits, it's just harder to turn into outs there. But would you continue to start Gausman? And next week he's at the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, I would. It seems like a pretty fluky thing. And you look at the ERA estimators for Gausman, and I know the ERA itself is plenty respectable, 3.45. Yeah, it's a little worse than I thought, actually. 3.45 ERA, but you look at the ERA estimators, 279 xFIP, 241 FIP. Even the xERA, at least coming into this start, was lower than last year. It's been going on all year, so that does give me pause. But sometimes fluky things happen like this with BABIP, and a pitcher just he just has bad luck all year.
You know what? I think it really might be an artificial turf thing in Rogers Center, because he has a 4.67 ERA with a 144 whip at home this year. That is Kevin Gausman. 2.45 ERA, 108 whip on the road. So gonna have to do more research on that in the offseason. But I know Gausman, even with the Giants, he gives up a lot of hard contact. It's just he gets so many whiffs that he's able to kind of wiggle around it. But maybe that hard contact just doesn't work out as well in Toronto. Considering he's on the road next week at the Phillies, yes, I'm going to continue to start him here down the stretch. The last one is Miles Mikolas, who, did you have anything else, Scott, on Gausman?
Well, his ground ball rate's really low for what it's worth. It's below 40%. So
I think he gives up a lot of line drives too.
He has this year. Yeah. So that, you would think he was getting burned. If he was getting burned by the turf, you'd think he'd be giving up a lot of ground balls, right? I would. But that's a curious case for sure.
Miles Mikolas did turn in a quality start, but it was like one of those not so great quality starts. 6 innings, 3 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and over his last 5 starts, he has a 4.20 ERA. So kind of a league average pitcher during that span. He is at the Padres next week, Scott, who over the last 14 days are 28th in weighted on base average. So they're a pretty good matchup. What do you think about Mikolas at the Padres?
It's an okay start. I would say it's not a must start. Kind of in the same territory as Lance McCullers, I would say, where I'd like to have a better option than a 1-start Miles Mikolas against the Padres, but if I feel like that's the best I could do, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to pick up some scrub to start over him.
All right. Well, that is Miles Mikolas, and again, at the Padres next week, and their offense is just absolutely scuffling right now. Before we hit the break, just want to let you know the schedule for next week. Obviously, we're only doing 4 podcasts per week throughout the month of September. So next week's live YouTube schedule will be Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night. So no Wednesday night next week. I'm going to see some wrestling, but you will have a podcast in your audio feed Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, and Friday morning of next week. Let's hit the break, and we'll get to the news and notes here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
The UEFA Champions League. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath acceleration. While Mbappe shines in the city of lights, Benzema's racking up the hat tricks, and the Reds want Mo Magic in Liverpool. This ain't amateur hour. This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live on Paramount+.
The news and notes, and this might be our lightest news and notes segment of the season, which frankly isn't an issue. Shane Baz will not return this season. He was shut down back in July due to a right elbow sprain. Scott, what's your worryometer for Shane Baz from a dynasty context?
Well, anytime there's something going on with the elbow ligament, I'm fearful that Tommy John is just around the corner. Of course, I got that very wrong with Zach Gallen this year. But Shane Baz is a guy that we've never seen take on a lot of innings. So my concern level is medium, I would say. Obviously, he's still a huge dynasty asset. I'm not saying sell him for nickels on the dollar, but I would have liked to see him get through his rookie season healthy, and clearly he hasn't. And what's kept him sidelined is the sort of thing that potentially points to continued issues.
Stop me if you've heard this before. Luis Robert was out of the lineup on Thursday with left hand and wrist discomfort. And I keep getting questions about whether people can drop Luis Robert, Scott, with, 2.5, a little over 2.5 weeks left. What do you think about that?
I wouldn't want to do that. Now, I always wonder when people bring this up, like, what does your roster look like? And in terms of like, how many bench spots do you have? Because I would think it's worth holding on Luis Robert just so it doesn't come back to bite you,
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't early in the season, you really need like you can't have enough bench spots early in the season because you're trying to cast a wide net and get all those early breakouts off the waiver wire. But at this point in the season, like using that bench spot defensively, I think that's pretty high priority. And obviously Luis Robert is somebody who could do a lot of damage. I understand the frustration and not feeling like he's not playing right now, so you can't start him, but I'd rather hold on to him.
It's a good point that you bring up about playing defense this time of year, because I had a buddy tell me about how he dropped Jeffrey Springs last week after his 3-inning outing, where he got piggybacked by Yanni Chirinos. And then his opponent in a 2-week daily lineup matchup picked him up and used him this week when he had that awesome start. 6 shutout innings, whatever it was. So, it's kind of rough. You do have to play a bit of defense at this point. It's just, even when Luis Robert has been in the lineup, he clearly isn't himself because he's battling this injury. Let's say he's your worst outfielder, Scott. Would you drop him for Oscar Gonzalez?
If I needed to start an outfielder, like if Oscar Gonzalez was clearly the best choice for me to start next week and dropping Luis Robert was the only viable way to get him on my roster, yeah, I guess I'd do that. But I think I'm talking to a very small sliver of people who meet all those criteria.
Right. Alejandro Kirk was out of the lineup Thursday due to a sore hip. Rhys Hoskins also out of the lineup after getting hit by a pitch on his hand on Wednesday. X-rays were negative for that. David Peterson will be moved to the Mets bullpen within a few days as expected. Sounds like Max Scherzer will be back early next week. Luis Arraez not in the lineup Thursday due to hamstring tightness. Twins outfielder Trevor Larnach had his rehab assignment moved to AAA. He had core muscle surgery back in June. Reds pitcher Justin Dunn was placed on the IL with right shoulder tightness. And we do have one prospect update. There's some rumblings that Rockies prospect Ezekiel Tovar, who has been rehabbing, coming back from an injury, could finish the season in the major leagues with the Colorado Rockies, Scott. So I know there's not much use to stashing players at this point, but I don't know. What do you think? He's a pretty big prospect, Ezekiel Tovar.
Oh, he's probably...
It's like a top 20 fantasy prospect.
Right. I mean, he's arguably the biggest prospect riser this year. He went from being not a top 100 guy at the start of the year to as you said, maybe top 20. I think I've maybe even seen him top 15 on some prospect lists right now. So it's definitely interesting, and he'd be jumping straight from AA, only 21 years old. To be a very aggressive move from the Rockies to call him up. Here's the thing: if he's not up by the end of next week, he doesn't get a single game at Coors Field this year.
Right.
So there's no point in picking him up outside of a dynasty keeper context. I mean, dynasty leagues, I'm sure he's already rostered, but maybe a league where you keep a dozen players or more, it might make sense to pick him up for that purpose. But I don't see us getting use out of him this year.
If you just have an absolute dead roster spot that you are not using, I wouldn't mind stashing him this weekend just in case he gets the call, and then he has those 7 games in Coors Field next week. And then if he doesn't get the call for next week, all right, whatever, you could just drop him again. But it's something to think about. Again, if you just have a completely dead roster spot. Let's jump into week 25. Week 25 already, huh? Only 2.5 weeks left. The schedule for next week, we have 16 teams with 6 games. We have 12 teams with 7 games. 2 teams with 8 games, the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers. Thankfully, no teams with 5 games next week. Starter sit these fringe 2-start pitchers. Scott, I have a lot of names on the list. And
it's a big list this week. A lot of quality options too. If you don't have a lot of 2-start pitchers in your lineup next week, that's a problem.
Let's start off with our guy, Uncle Chuck, Charlie Morton, going up against the Nationals at home and then the Phillies on the road. I will point out that we got an email from a listener named Lewis who let us know that Charlie Morton has been great this season at home. I think it's a 2.45 ERA and terrible on the road. So I think it's like a 4.5 ERA, something like that. So, 1 start at home, 1 start on the road next week. What do we do?
You probably start him. I'm not saying it's a must, but you probably do it. As we went over yesterday, I was saying, maybe he's a matchups play the rest of the season. And then we looked at his matchups and it's like, okay, well, if he is a matchups play, you're just going to keep starting him.
You know what? I do want to quickly pull up his splits because those are 2 teams that he probably has faced earlier in the season. So I'm just going to talk about things while I pull that up quickly. Charlie Morton so far this season. All right, let's see. Against the Nationals, he has made 1 start, 7 innings, 2 runs. All right, pretty good there. And against the Phillies, he has made 4 starts. He's got a 4.15 ERA. So, you know what? I just kind of feel like, again, the splits, he'll probably have a great start against the Nationals and then maybe not so good against the Phillies. So do with that what you will. I'm definitely starting him in a points league. Roto, if you have better options, maybe not, but Scott says yes. Merrill Kelly at the Dodgers and home against the Giants.
I would say probably yes on him too. I know those are, you don't like starting anybody against the Dodgers, and Merrill Kelly's been kind of shaky this year. I pointed out after his last start that he's been allowing more home runs lately. Again, with this issue of home runs being up in September. But he's still going deep into games, he's still he hasn't gotten throttled. He's just been a little shaky. And with the kind of track record, with the kind of season he's put together, I don't think he's somebody you could seriously consider sitting with a 2-star week.
How about this? Merrill Kelly has made 4 starts against each of the Dodgers and Giants this year. And against the Dodgers, he has an 8.50 ERA. And against the Giants, 1.27. So again, do with that what you will. Jekyll and Hyde matchups for Merrill Kelly. Drew Rasmussen is at home for 2 against the Astros and the Blue Jays. So, some tough offenses there.
Yeah, lean yes on him also.
Luis, go ahead, Scott.
It's just the quality of the pitchers too high. I know the matchups are tough, but again, with as many solid 2-start options, I mean, I got 25 2-start pitchers who I'm recommending on some level, even if it's just in a points league. So you kind of have to look at your opponent. How many starts are they getting this week? Assuming it's a head-to-head league, obviously, and that might factor into your thinking as well. But I'm not going to let the matchups dissuade me from a pitcher who I think is good and is in line for 2 starts.
Luis Garcia of the Astros quietly has an ERA over 4, 4.04 on the season. When did that happen? It Feels like he's pitched well, but maybe he's slowed up a little bit. He's at Tampa Bay and at the Orioles next week.
Yeah, so he has good matchups. If he didn't, I might be a little iffier on him, but matchups are good enough that I'll run Luis Garcia out there.
Cal Quantrill has pitched quite well here in the second half. He is home against the Twins and then at the Texas Rangers.
Probably just points leagues for him.
Adam Wainwright is at the Padres and at the Dodgers.
Same thing. Points leagues only. He's been giving up a lot of hits lately.
Yep.
His whip now, I believe it's around 1.25. That's up 0.2 of a point from the past 2 years. So he's and mostly it's because of all the hits he's given up lately. But even so, it makes him, I think it's turned what's. I think his season's turning out to be kind of a disappointment, actually. He had 17 wins last year. I don't know what he's at now, but it's much less than 17.
He has 11 wins, a 3.29 ERA, and a 1.24 whip with, well under a strikeout per inning. He has 137 strikeouts and 178 innings pitched. Yeah, it's not great. Not a great season. Kyle Gibson is home against the Blue Jays and the Braves next week.
No.
I agree. Rowanzi Contreras at the Yankees and home against the Cubs.
No.
Mike Clevenger, home against the Cardinals at the Rockies.
No.
I agree. Brian Bayo at the Reds and at the Yankees.
No.
I will say, of the 4 pitchers we mentioned there, if you're desperate, I probably would like Brian Bayo the most.
Save it, Frank. Save it for Fortune Favors the Brave, all right? Don't spoil it.
2 start pitchers to add and stream next week, Scott. You have 2, 4, 6 names on this list. Who are they?
Well, Frank, if you must ask, they are Nick Lodolo, of course. He is the pitcher who I cannot stop talking about down the stretch this year's matchups this week. Red Sox and Brewers. Pretty favorable there, especially the Brewers. They're bad against lefties. Ross Stripling at Philadelphia, at Tampa Bay. And the matchups are so-so, but obviously Ross Stripling has been very reliable lately. 6 straight quality starts, 2-start week. I think you go ahead with him. Drew Smiley. We talked about all these guys yesterday. Matchups are ridiculously good. Marlins and Pirates. He's only 35% rostered still for as much as we've been talking about him. And if you did miss the stat yesterday, Drew Smiley in his past 8 starts, 2.23 ERA. So very excited to start him. Patrick Sandoval at the Rangers, at the Twins. Okay, so-so matchups, but he's making 2 starts and sometimes he's pretty good. So we'll have him on here as a sleeper pitcher. Jose Suarez gets the Mariners and Twins. We're getting pretty deep on the list here now. That might just be that might be more of a deeper league play, especially like a points league play. And Dean Kramer, same thing. Tigers, really good matchup. Astros, not so much. However, they're both in Baltimore, where Dean Kramer, like every fly ball pitcher, tends to be at his best.
Scott, excuse me if you said this. Forgive me if you said this, but you have 2 Angels pitchers on here as 2-star pitchers. They have, even if they have 7 games next week with a 6-man rotation, can they have 2-star pitchers?
Sandoval and who else?
Jose Suarez.
Oh, Jose Suarez. Okay, so let me double check that.
I only started thinking about it because I have Patrick Sandoval in a 2-week matchup, and I would love for him to have two more starts next week. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think good catch. Let me double check, see how the rotation's looking. Yeah, they're going 6-man like they always do. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. I don't know who got left out here. Okay, so I think Suarez.
Will have
the 2-start guy and not Sandoval.
My heart.
Sorry about that, Frank.
He got me hyped for a second.
Yeah, I'm going to take him out. I'm not as excited about him with 1 start against the Rangers.
Jeez.
So that's going to add Adrian Sampson as a 2-start sleeper pitcher. He has the same matchups that Drew Smiley does, Marlins and Pirates.
Man,
my gosh, I do not I do not trust him at all because he doesn't miss any bats. But those are two really favorable matchups. He's only 5% rostered. I mean, that's as true of a sleeper as you're going to find.
Yeah, you really cannot get better than that in a 2-start week. I mean, maybe
Well,
Tigers and A's, something like that.
Yeah, and you mean in terms of the matchups, not in terms of the pitcher.
Oh yeah, I mean,
look, if do I really want to
Adrian
have him on
Sampson,
this list,
Adrian Sampson is not a good pitcher. He
right?
He has a 3.48 ERA with a 1.27 WHIP, right? So those two things do not line up. But these matchups are so good, Scott. I would be willing to play him in a points league, and if you're chasing volume in a categories league, I'm going for it. Those matchups.
I wanted to make him my Fortune Favors the Brave pick, which is of course not really a recommendation. Because I don't really want to recommend him, but he rounds out the list here. I got to have a 10th pitcher, and so it's going to be Adrian Sampson.
All right, which brings us to the aforementioned Fortune Favors the Brave. I had a name.
Well, I didn't get the 1-start options.
Oh, right. What am I doing? Well,
or do we do this first?
Yeah, we'll do the 2-star pick. I think we usually do this first. I don't know.
Whatever.
Anyway, Fortune Favors the Brave, as Scott mentioned. You've listened to us. You know, this is probably someone you should not be playing, but desperate times call for desperate measures. It's crunch time. So if you're chasing volume, maybe you're down in a 2-week head-to-head matchup, and you just need all the help you can get in the world. Scott, who will
can't pick Adrian Sampson now because I've already used him as just a normal sleeper.
You know, it feels kind of dirty to put Brian Bayo in this conversation because I feel like he's a better pitcher than the ones we normally recommend for this segment. It feels disrespectful to him.
I mean, the talent is there, but has he had a start that's been that useful in fantasy yet? He's been getting better, but still there are still issues going on there. So I think it's fine. I'll pick Dylan Bundy. He has the Royals and Angels.
Yeah, those are pretty good matchups. The one I was going to give out was Tyler Wells. He has the Tigers, but then the Astros. So, one really good matchup, one terrible matchup. But
again, they're both in Baltimore.
Yeah. So that definitely could help him. And, the cherry on top is Brian Bayo. We'll give you him as well if you're desperate, but you probably should not play those players. Single start streamers for next week, Scott. Who you got?
Okay. So a few pretty good ones here. Trevor Rogers gets the Nationals, and I'm back on board with him, especially with a matchup that good. John Gray gets the Guardians, and he looked good in his return. Short start because he didn't have a rehab assignment, but I trust him with that matchup. And Johnny Cueto gets the Tigers. I say that as if it's the last one. It's the second to last one. Marcus Stroman at Miami.
Love it. Great start there. Let's move over to the sleeper hitters. The best hitter matchups include the Giants, who have 7 games next week, including 4 in Coors Field, the Mariners, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Cubs. The worst hitter matchups, the A's, the Nationals, the Phillies, Cardinals, and the Rays. With that being said, Scott, your sleeper hitters for next week.
I don't love these sleeper hitters, if I'm being honest, but it's the best we have. So Jock Peterson, I think, is the big matchups winner.
I see names on here, Scott, that you would never recommend. So
exactly. Jock Peterson is the big matchups winner. The Giants have the best ones, as you said, in 4 games at Coors Field and only 1 lefty on the schedule. So expect Jock Peterson to play a lot and take advantage of those matchups. Elvis Andrus, of course, has been hot. White Sox matchups are at least decent. 3 games against the Tigers. Keep Brian Hayes. He's been hot lately and especially good against left-handers. The Pirates have 3 of those on the schedule.
You mean the Cubs? Because he's on the Pirates.
Yeah. The Pirates have 3 lefties on the schedule.
I thought I heard it as you were saying, like the Pirates have 3 lefties pitching, and I'm like,
oh no,
makes sense.
No, but he is going against Cubs pitchers, so the matchups are not bad for Brian Hayes. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa.
Let's go.
Hey, Yankees have the 4th best matchups, and he's been as hot as Isaiah Kiner-Falefa can be. We talked about Will Myers yesterday. He gets a 3-game series at Coors Field. and has been playing first base consistently, hitting pretty well. So I do have Oscar Gonzalez and Gunnar Henderson on this list just because I think they're under rostered. Their matchups are whatever, but they're not bad enough to steer me away from them. And they meet the roster threshold of qualifying for this list, so they're on here too. I'll throw one more name at you, Carlos Santana. Hasn't done a lot. Like, it's basically been home run or nothing, but he has like 3 home runs in the past week, and he gets a series at Oakland. The matchups are good. The Mariners have the second best matchups of any team this week, and he's at that launching pad. So hopefully he can hit a couple home runs in that series and make him a worthwhile start. A guy who's available in 90% of leagues. Again, this is not it's not a terribly exciting list. Hopefully, if you're in your league's championship game or whatever, you have pretty good hitters on your roster already.
Man, can you tell that there's 2 weeks left in the baseball season? We're recommending Elvis Andrus every day here on the show. And now we're talking about Oakland Coliseum like it's Coors Field. Like, what is going on? I feel like we need to pull up the weather for next week in Oakland to see whether it's going to be hot or not, right?
That's
like,
true. I mean, we probably should.
Yeah.
Didn't do that.
Maybe I'll do that, while you're talking about something else. Scott, any love for the Punisher, Aristides Aquino? He went 2 for 4 with his 9th home run on Thursday. His last 14 games now, he's hitting .354, 5 homers, 21% strikeout rate, hitting the ball hard, putting the ball in the air. He's got 6 games next week. 2 of those matchups are against Corbin Burns and Woodruff. So, but widely available if you play in 5 outfielder leagues. What do you think about Aquino?
Not particularly excited.
Have you watched the show, The Punisher?
No.
Why not?
Why not?
It's really good.
Well, did it really end? Didn't Netflix just kind of dump all those comic book shows in the garbage after Disney got the rights to them all?
It's so tragic too. I think Daredevil is going to make a comeback, which was also very good. I think Punisher was even better.
I'm not gonna invest in a show that doesn't really end. Does it end?
I don't think so. I think there was only 2 seasons, but they were really good, Scott.
Yeah, well,
I highly recommend it. All right, so I've got the weather pulled up for Oakland next week. I don't even know which series it is. Is it the first part of the week or the second part of the week? So the first part of the week is not that hot, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Oakland, California, 80 degrees, 87, 86. That'll work.
Yeah, but it's not that part of the week. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday where it's
well,
rainy, highs in the 70s. I mean, I don't know what's normal in Oakland is the thing.
No, I mean, I think that's pretty normal this time of year, but
yeah.
I wish we were getting that later part of the week with that Oakland weather. Alas, this is, again, this point of the year, this is the stuff that we need to dive into, right? We're looking at the weather in Oakland. Alas, did I just say alas twice in like 30 seconds? Why did I do that? Let's wrap up with some leftovers here from Thursday's action. Some pitching standouts. Lance Lynn makes it 7 straight outings, allowing 2 earned runs or fewer. He was at the Guardians, 6 1/3, 2 runs allowed, 6 strikeouts. And during that span, he has a 1.43 ERA, 51 strikeouts to just 5 walks, and a 17% swinging strike rate. He's been amazing. Like clockwork, everybody benches Pablo Lopez, and he goes out and has a great start against the Phillies. 6 2/3, 2 runs allowed, 5 strikeouts in this one. Gets his ERA back below 4, 3.99 on the season. Carlos Carrasco put up a season-high 11 strikeouts against the Pirates. He goes 6 innings, 1 run, 11 strikeouts with 15 swinging strikes. Scott, anything you'd like to add on those 3? Lance Lynn, Pablo Lopez, and Carlos Carrasco.
Just so frustrated with Pablo Lopez all year. Like he's single-handedly ruined one of my teams, and 4 of his last 5 starts have been good, but the one that wasn't was so disastrous that I couldn't start him against the Phillies, and he bounces back with a nice start. So that's just great.
Indeed, it is. Speaking of Pablo, do you start or sit next week at home against the Cubs, which typically is a good matchup? How about this? Got so weird that I saw this. Pablo Lopez's home ERA this year, 4.82 in Marlins Park.
Yeah.
Seems weird.
It's a run higher than his overall ERA, right?
Yep.
So I don't know that I mean, just one awful start could skew that. Yeah. Lean yes on that, I guess. But it's I'd rather not have to be in a position where I have to think about it all. I'd rather my pitching just be so good that whatever. Pablo Lopez can just stay out of the way. But I lean yes, I guess.
How about Carlos Carrasco? He is at the Brewers next week, and their offense in general has not been good over the past 2 weeks, but they are great against righties. 4th in weighted on base average against right-handed pitching.
Who'd you say?
The Brewers. Carlos Carrasco at the Brewers.
Yeah, probably start him.
Okay. Let's move over to some hitting leftovers. Vlad Jr. went 1 for 4 with his 8th steal. When did this happen? All 8 steals have come since July 27th. Vlad Jr. is tied for 8th most in Major League Baseball during that time.
That's weird.
It's very weird. But it just adds a little bit of a wrinkle. Obviously, we talked a lot about this recently where there's going to be more steals than ever next year. So maybe ultimately it doesn't matter that much. But
Well, not than ever, but more than in a long time.
Yeah. If he's a 280 hitter with 35 home runs and, 6 or 7 steals, that matters. I mean, that factors into his roto output. So for years, it helped Freddie Freeman. So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know that it will anymore next year, though. I think 6 steals will be basically irrelevant given the number of players that are going to have 15, 20 plus. That's my guess. And I don't think Vladimir Guerrero is going to be one that has 15, 20 plus.
Francisco Lindor went 1 for 5 with his 24th homer. Yordan Alvarez starting to pick it back up. He has 3 straight multi-hit games. That's good. Getting hot at the right time. Salvador Perez went 2 for 4 with his 21st homer. Better late than never, Scott. 43 games since returning from the IL. Salvador Perez is hitting .291 with 10 homers, 34 RBI, 92.8 mile per hour average exit velocity, 45% fly ball rate, and that is a 34 homer, 118 RBI pace over 150 games.
Yeah, it's more like it.
Yeah.
Way to go, Salvi. If he had done that from the beginning,
yeah,
then I'd be patting myself on the back right now, but he didn't.
Carlos Correa went 1 for 2 with 2 walks and his 21st homer. Just having a fantastic September. Looking to opt out and maybe cash in another big contract. But in the month, he's hitting .373, 6 homers, a 1233 OPS for Carlos Correa. Ketel Marte hit his 11th home run, which ended a 36-game homerless drought for Ketel Marte. I just wanted to take a little bit of time, Scott, to take a look at Marte and figure out what went wrong this season. You look at his career and it's kind of this roller coaster. One year, he looks like an MVP candidate. He was dreadful in the shortened season. He bounced back last year. He looked pretty good once again. And then, we had confidence coming into this year and, he's taken another big step back. 411 slug, 161 ISO. His home run to fly ball ratio basically, it's not basically, it's more than chopped in half from last year to this year. So what have you seen? What went wrong with Ketel Marte this year?
That's a good question. You look at it even now and like max exit velocity, 96th percentile. Like when he gets into one, he really gets into one. And so that makes me think he should be a pretty good source of power. I mean, even the average exit velocity is not bad. It's 68th percentile.
It is down compared to last year though. Quite a bit.
But yeah, it is. But it's good enough that you wouldn't expect him to have only 11 home runs and that extended drought. But, apart from 2019, when he hit the 32 home runs, and 2019 was, of course, the year that everybody set a career high in home runs because of the juice ball. There isn't really a lot of evidence that he's a home run hitter of any sort, apart from that one season. Yes, he had 14 in 90 games last year, which is a pretty good pace. but not like, oh, this guy's a slugger,
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm tempted to say I'm out on Ketel Marte, but like second base is pretty dreadful position.
Yeah.
And you see that StatCast page and you're like, yes, this looks like a pretty talented player.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Chris is going to talk us all into him again next year.
Probably. That's exactly what I'm thinking right now. The call to the bullpen for the Marlins. They had a 2-run lead. Tanner Scott pitched in the 8th. Dylan Floro then pitched in the 9th. He gave up a run, but did pick up his 5th save of the season. That's now 2 saves in a row for Dylan Floro. He's 11% rostered. For the Astros, Ryan Presley was unavailable. Rafael Montero picked up his 13th save. For the Twins, I guess Jorge Lopez was unavailable. He did pitch on Wednesday, but it's not like he was.
Jorge Lopez hasn't had a save in September, and he's been bad since coming over the Twins.
Yeah, not good. Yohan Duran struck out 2 for his 7th save in that Twins game. And then for the Reds, Alexis Diaz gave up a run, but picked up his 7th save. He is 40% rostered. Scott, let's say you need saves. We're going to rank these 4. Alexis Diaz, Dylan Floro, and I had the other 2 on my mind, and now they're gone.
Jose
Leclerc and Pete Fairbanks. Those are the 4. Fairbanks, Leclerc, Floro, Alexis Diaz.
So this was actually Diaz's first save of September as well. Not that means he's, he could get one tomorrow, obviously.
It's just
saves work.
The Reds are bad.
All right. So even though he probably has the most tenuous grasp on the role, I think I'm going to put Fairbanks first, and then Leclerc, and then Diaz, and then Floro.
All right. To stream or not to stream, Friday, German Marquez at the Cubs, Marcus Stroman versus the Rockies, Matt Manning versus the White Sox, Mitch Keller at the Mets, and Bailey Ober making his return at the Guardians.
Let's go with Marcus Stroman and maybe German Marquez, but not if you're looking to preserve ERA and WHIP.
On Saturday, Jose Quintana versus the Reds, Hunter Green in his return at the Cardinals, Trevor Rogers at the Nationals, Eduardo Rodriguez versus the White Sox, and John Gray at the Rays.
So I got to go Trevor Rogers at the Nationals, which I guess means he's going to have 2 starts against the Nationals in a row. Generally, that's an advantage for the hitters, but whatever. I think Trevor Rogers is good again. And I'm also fine with John Gray.
On Sunday, 1-800-GLEN Auto at Tampa Bay, Bailey Falter at the Braves, Kyle Bradish at the Blue Jays, Javier Assad versus the Rockies, Marco Gonzalez at the Angels, and Ryan Nelson versus the Padres.
Not loving any of these.
Yeah, me neither.
If I had to start one, it'd probably be Ryan Nelson, actually, even though I've told everyone not to start him, not to bother with him.
Yeah, I agree. I if you're really desperate in a deeper league, Assad against the Rockies in Chicago.
I mean, Marco Gonzalez at the Angels could turn out okay too.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily want to sign up for that. Sign my name next to that.
All right, we're going to wrap there for Scott. I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again on Monday. Bye-bye.